Perfect stuff. So, hello everyone. You're all very welcome to tonight's Grass 10 and PastureBase Ireland webinar, of which this is the fifth in our series. Our webinar this evening is titled Hitting Grazing Targets in 2021 with PastureBase Ireland. And over the next hour, we'll be talking through some tips and advice on managing the second rotation during April and also setting the farm up with quality grass for your animals over the summer months. So my name is Joseph Dunphy, and I'm once again delighted to be joined by my Grass 10 colleague, John Douglas, and also Micheál O'Leary, the coordinator of PastureBase Ireland. I'm also delighted to be joined by dairy farmer Noel Hurley from County Cork and sheep farmer Peter McGuinness from County Meath. So both Peter and Noel were winners on the Grass 10 Grassland Farmer of the Year competition from 2020. Noel was the Grassland Merit winner for Most Improved Grassland, and Peter was the overall winner in the sheep production category. So just a small little bit of housekeeping once again before we get going tonight. If you have any questions for any of our panelists as we move through the evening, just please put them into the Q&A box on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And for maybe people who are missing this tonight or who have missed some of our previous webinars, as I've said already, this is the fifth one in our series. All the webinars that we've done starting just before Christmas in December last year are all available on the Grass 10 page on the Teagasc public website. So to navigate to that, if you just go to your search engine and search Teagasc Grass 10, and when it brings you into the Teagasc main page, down on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the webinars subheading. And when you click into the webinars subheading, all the recordings plus the PowerPoint presentations from the night will all be there for you either to watch back or flick down through for all the webinars. Okay, so just to the structure of tonight's webinar before we get going. But myself and Micheál will just talk through some of the, some of the give an update on PastureBase Ireland figures and an update from the last 3 months. Then we will have a quick look at some of the KPIs from the grass wedge. So maybe some people who are new to PastureBase or who are using PastureBase the last couple of years and just want to make better use of it and maybe make some better decisions from the wedge, from your weekly walks that you're doing now as we move in through April and out through into the summer. Then we'll have a look at Peter McGuinness's and we'll have a quick chat with him and discuss, I suppose, managing the spring and April on a sheep farm and setting the farm up with quality grass as we move into the summer and into early autumn and what happens on his farm in a typical year. And then we'll get on with Noel, who's our dairy farmer here this evening, and have a chat through his current grass situation on his farm and I suppose the key grazing targets for a dairy farm. So just to have a quick look at some of the figures that have kind of come in this week from PastureBase Ireland into the Grass 10 weekly newsletter, and this newsletter is published every Tuesday. It's available on the Teagasc public website there under publications, and you can also sign up to receive the newsletter every week. So average farm covers across the country are running around 760 kilos of dry matter per hectare. Okay, so we've had, there was some heat towards the latter part of last week, which really drove on grass, around the country. However, just to, I suppose, a word of caution, we're in for a quite, we've had a few colder days, and we're in for a colder, spell towards the weekend. So for people on the call tonight, if you see some of the predicted growth rates that are down there for the couple of research farms and over there from the most grass predictor model, the grass growth prediction model, growth are predicted to be back this week. So for people who are maybe on we call it on the knife edge, who are coming down towards maybe 550, 600, 650 of an average farm cover, it's very, very important to keep an eye on that as we move through this week. Okay, so critical to walk your farm, measure grass this week on using PastureBase Ireland, and avoid going under 550 kilos of dry matter per hectare of an average farm cover at all cost as we move in through the next week or 10 days. Okay, so I suppose, just excuse me for a second here, I just want to get rid of this screen. So just in terms of, just to set the scene for tonight's discussion, I suppose coming back to some of the GRAS 10 targets, and I suppose achieving the 10 grazings per paddock per year and growing they talked about, the 14 ton of grass per paddock and utilizing the 10 ton of grass. I suppose what I wanted to get out of this is that, not to worry if things haven't gone to plan so far with grass measurement on your farm. If we go through growing 14 ton of grass, in a typical year, if we break it down into the different periods of the year, and normally, on average from February to mid-April, we're probably growing somewhere in around a ton of grass, okay, in that first rotation. Okay, so that's in around, somewhere in around 10% of our grass production is done in that early part of the year. And I suppose the winning and losing of our grass year, in terms of ensuring quality and the correct grasses in front of our stock, is done from mid-April to mid-August. Okay, so if you haven't been measuring grass, and I suppose you were dabbling a bit in it the last couple of years, not too late to get going this year on it. Okay, so to have the correct rotation length, where 19, 20, 21 days as we move into periods of higher growth rates, as we move into late April and out through May, June and July, that is the winning and losing in terms of the quality, and to stick to our pre-grazing yields of 1400 throughout the year. So very, very important from now on, is really crucial from a grassland management point of view on farm. Okay, and just in terms of, for people on the call who are on the webinar tonight, who are familiar with I suppose the dashboard of your PastureBase account, if you want to maybe have a quick look and see what grass, what tonnage you have done so far to date, down here in the bottom right hand corner in the annual tonnage subheading down here, and you can have a quick look at how paddocks have performed for you in the first 3 months of the year. But as you said already, it's only early in the year yet, and the key thing is to start walking your farm from now on. Okay, so Michal, I might just throw it over to you for a quick look at some of the data from the last few months, if that's okay.
Thanks, Joseph, and good evening, everyone. So I suppose just the first slide there on display is the national growth curve, or grass growth curve. So if we look back at the spring, I suppose in general, I suppose it was a slow and wet spring. Growth rates were, I suppose, a good bit below average coming into February. But then I suppose we caught up a good bit coming into March. But I suppose it's really the critical point there, where I suppose you can see the 31st of March there, that we're growing roughly about 20, 25 kilos on average. And then if we look at the middle of April, or the end of April, the 28th of April, on average, we're growing about 60 kilos. So there's a threefold increase in grass growth there within 30 days. So I suppose there's a big surge of grass coming on the way on our farms. And I suppose this webinar is trying to deal with that surge, and I suppose to ensure that our livestock, be it sheep, cows or dry stock, that they're able to graze high quality grass and to perform to their best ability. So at the moment, I suppose if we look at farms, roughly they would have grazed about 80 or 90% at this stage, and some of them have started the second rotation at this stage. Then just this graph, it just shows the number of covers coming in each week. Again, it's great to see 2021 more covers coming in to PastureBase, and yourselves are using the application more. And we have a good few new users who are after coming on board again in 2021 as well, which obviously makes our job easier to see that more people are using the application. Again, this is just figures on the number of covers coming through the PBI offline app. And again, we would strongly recommend all users to download it on their phone, PBI Grass, and it makes the job much easier. And then I suppose finally, just from a pasture-based point of view, I suppose we have 3 new updates coming on stream. We have a nitrogen planner, which is in the final stage of testing. We also will be bringing in forecast and actual weather data. And finally, later on in the summer, we will have a mapping module where you'll be able to map your farm and you'll be able to display results on a map as well. So I suppose PastureBase is always evolving, adding on bits and pieces every year, and I hopefully you will like our new additions. So over to you again, Joseph.
Brilliant stuff, Michal. Thanks a million for that. And look, just to to mention that again, the roughly up to now, Michal, about 50% of the covers per week were coming in on the app. Would that for 2020? Would that have been correct?
Roughly 50%, yeah. And I suppose we would like to see that to grow another bit. The app is extremely easy to use and it's quick. And I suppose it's in your pocket most of the time anyway. So it's definitely one to download.
Great stuff, Michal. Thanks a million. So, Michal, maybe if you want to take control there and maybe and just open PastureBase, and I suppose just for the first part of our session here tonight is just maybe for people on the call who just not as familiar with some of the KPIs of the grass wedge. So you do your grass walk every week, and we have the covers in per paddock, but as we move from a period of low growth rates to high growth rates, it's not really about what covers on the paddock. It's about having on paddocks across the farm. It's having a look at the wedge, I suppose, as a whole, and making decisions based on growth rates, based on demand, based on rotation length, based as we move through April and into May. So moving fairly okay there, Michal.
Yeah, so I'll probably just go through some of these figures here now, Joe.
Yeah, perfect, John. Go first.
So we'll just imagine this is the first time you've done a walk on your farm, and this is your wedge. So you can see here, the first thing you see is a range of paddocks. So you can see the different green bars there, different paddocks, and they've all a range of covers stretching from about 1,500 back down to, we'll say, 100. So the paddocks are just being grazed out. There's a bit of residual left on them. So, and we can see obviously the red line there is showing the demand for grass on the farm, and the blue line is if there was meal excluded. So this is just a dairy example. So there's obviously some meal going into some of the cows, but very little. So that red line is more or less matching up fairly well. It actually probably is shown, if you were just looking at it, you'd say it might be showing a little bit of a surplus, but it's very hard to tell just from the wedge. So that's why we need to know these figures below. So if we're talking about different units of measurement, I suppose we talk about euro. If we're talking about money, when it comes to measuring grass, we're talking about kilos of dry matter per hectare. So 1 ton of dry matter is equivalent to about 5 bales of silage, just to quantify it. So if you can imagine how many animals might require to eat a ton of dry matter, it just helps quantify it a little bit better. So the average for this farm we can see is 715 kilos of dry matter on the farm. So that's the average farm cover. So if you took it, it calculates the total amount of grass on the farm and divides it by the total area on the farm, and then that's where that figure arises from. So total grass divided by total area gives 715 kilos of dry matter. And roughly, if you look at the wedge above there, if you pick the paddocks that are in around the middle of the wedge, they're not going to be far off around that 700 figure. If you're looking across on the left hand side, you'll see they're in around 700. So that's just an idea of what the average farm cover is. So, and just as a rule of thumb, generally, if you sort of double the average farm cover, it'll come up with the pre-grazing yield. So if we double 715, that comes up to 1430, which is, it's not far off there in that scenario where your pre-grazing yield would be. But you have to be careful of that, because you could have 2 or 3 very heavy covers and then a drop off back down to lower covers, like what happened on a lot of farms this spring, where there was a couple of heavy covers left and then the regrowths were back at 700 or whatever. So it doesn't always add up, but if you have a nice even wedge, it does. Okay, and I suppose they're all these numbers are interlinked, I suppose. So if we move on to the next one there, we have our cover per livestock unit, and basically how that's calculated is, okay, so I have 715 kilos of dry matter on a hectare, and my stocking rate in this scenario is 3.7. So you can see on the right hand side there, the stocking rate is 3.7. So we do a quick sum there. So it's 3.7 livestock units per hectare. And we divide that into the average cover per hectare, 715, which comes up at a cover per cow of 193. Okay. So probably just important to highlight there that, generally during the summertime, we're trying to hold average farm cover in the region of 600 to 700, and the cover per cow in the region of 160 to 180. So, and it works off that sum. So because that farm cover there is a little bit higher than the target, the cover per cow is a little bit higher than the target. And, so really if I'm looking at that and it's in the summertime, I might be thinking of, do I need to take out some surplus here? And at the moment you'd say no, but maybe next week, or maybe you have to walk in 3 or 4 days time and make that decision as you're measuring measuring the grass growth again. So your cover per livestock unit is very much tied in with the days ahead figure. So we have cows in the summertime. So Michal, if you scroll down there, we can see what those cows are eating in terms of grass. So those cows are eating 17 kilos of dry matter of grass there in the grass intake column. So if every cow we say had 10 days of grass ahead, well, that would be 170 kilos of dry matter per cow. But as we can see up above here, we're at 193 per cow. So that's telling me that I probably have over 11 days ahead at the moment. So so why it's not too bad. It's just getting a little bit on the higher side for cover per cow. Okay, so we're trying to keep it into 160 to 180, and this is all revolving back around the pre-grazing yield. So the reason we want to keep that farm cover between 600 and 700 is, we want to keep the pre-grazing yield in around 1400. That's the stage that the ryegrass plant is at about the 2.5 to 3 leaf stage. That's on a sort of 18-21 day rotation, and the most leaf is there in the plant at that stage. If we go any longer than that, more stem starts to introduce to the plant, and that leads to obviously poor cleanouts, poor animal performance, and lower grass growth in subsequent rotations. And if we go into soon in before that, well, then that means that we're going into light covers, and like some farmers who are in this situation now at the minute, their farm cover is 500 today, and their high-vis covers are 1,000. If they don't react soon coming into this cold week to hold that cover there, they'll run out of grass, run into a downward spiral. So that's why that pre-grazing, that's why the farm cover is in that region, because it's linked back to the pre-grazing yield. So if we can keep these figures, these targets in line, we'll do good for grass and for animal performance. Growth is simply how much grass is growing every day, and it's in kilos of dry matter per hectare per day. And the reason we have a growth figure, I suppose, is we can match it with our demand figure. So the demand is made up of my stocking rate multiplying by what the cows are eating every day, which is 17 kilos. So 3.7 times 17 in this scenario is equal to 63. And what you're trying to do here is match the growth and demand. So if you think about, you're on a 20-day rotation and you match the growth and demand, and your pre-grazing is 1400, well, like if you can continuously match the growth and demand, that pre-grazing yield can't really change, because the average farm cover can't change, because you're basically eating what you're growing, and you're stationary in terms of your pre-grazing yield, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Now, some of the dry stock farms might use, instead of stocking rate, kilos of live weight per hectare. So if you had maybe 2,000 kilos of live weight per hectare, well, basically the demand is worked off about 2% of that. So that would come out, I think, at 40 of a demand. So that's how that's worked out. So it's 2% of the body weight in the dry stock situation. And we'll when we move on to Peter, we'll talk about sheep and demand and days ahead on the sheep farm. So that's just an overview, I suppose, of the average farm cover and the growth and demand and the cover per livestock unit. So really, it shows what you're trying to do is keep on target. So if my cover per livestock unit is too high, well, then we'll have to do something to reduce it. If it's too low, again, we have to react to do something to reduce it. And maybe Noel will give us a few tips on what he does on his farm to keep on target with the grazing targets. So.
I suppose, John, just one point as well, that if you have too much grass, we'd say, for example, if you had over 200 kilos of dry matter per livestock unit, or if you had maybe 15 days grass ahead of you, and you want to remove a paddock from the wedge, I suppose that there's just two options. I suppose to remove the paddock, you can just simply click on the bar on the graph, change the paddock status there from grass and into silage, or else you can just simply go down the side here and you can just click on silage cut now or silage cut later. The paddock here is after turning yellow, so it's gone out for silage, and it's gone off the wedge, and you can see that our figures are after changing here. That's just one point to note.
Yeah, and I suppose likewise, if your cover per cow is at say 160 today, Michal, and you're coming into a cold week and you need to do something, obviously you can do the opposite. You can bring back maybe silage ground that's just been closed up on the platform back in, or you can increase the meal underneath the wedge, and that will, I suppose, have the same effect in doing the opposite, bring the cover per cow back up, or the average farm cover back up.
Michal, just for an example there, you might just pull down the demand figure, maybe for an example for someone who is at maybe 550 or 600 of an average farm cover today and needs to match, say, a growth of 30 to a demand of 30, or a growth of 25. So
yeah, so we just put in 8 maybe, and we just update it here. Yeah, so our demand here is, we're after setting our demand at 30. So we're after reducing our grass intake. So we're gone down to 8 kilos of grass. And as John says, we're stocked at 3.7. So that works out a demand in of 30 kilos.
Yeah.
Okay. So probably in this situation here, what's happening, Michal, is probably grass going in by day, meal and silage going into that system there to fully feed the animals.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good stuff.
That's okay then.
Okie doke.
Michal, there's just a question on that while we're there. There's 2 growth figures. Which one is more accurate? You just have the one in the brackets and the one.
Yeah. So if I just share my screen there again, and we'll just display it. I suppose if you hover your mouse on the value, I suppose the first 65 kilos of dry matter, that's just calculated on paddocks which haven't been grazed, and the one in the brackets is all paddocks on the farm. I mean, in grass, grazed and ungrazed. Personally, I probably would say that the one in the brackets is probably more accurate because it includes all paddocks, and I suppose monitoring your regrowths as well coming back. One in the brackets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. So
brilliant stuff. We'll keep moving there now, and I'm just going to share here this again. So we're just going to move on, John. So to Peter here. So
yeah, so you're able to hear us all right, Peter?
Yeah.
Good stuff. So I suppose you might as well introduce yourself there, Peter. I suppose whereabouts you're farming and what system you're running there.
Yeah, so I'm farming here just outside Trim in County Meath with my father Tom, and we're lambing about 800 Joes outdoors. So we started on the 10th of March, so we're fairly nearly wrapped up there now, about 20 or 30 left. So we're tillage farming as well, and we've a beef finishing unit on the farm as well. So doing a bit.
Yeah. So and where I suppose when did you was your father always very focused on grass in the past, or I suppose have you picked up? I suppose how did you get in? I suppose why were you focusing on grass? I suppose you're the sheep grass and farm of the year, so you're growing a lot of grass, managing it well. Where did you start that? Or
well, Dad, it would have been the routes that Dad would have put down. Dad used to go around on the quad every Monday with a notebook. That was his way of measuring the farm every week, just so he had eyeballing everything, so he had an idea of what was around the farm in different areas. And then through college, I was over in New Zealand and on placement on a dairy farm, and they were measuring grass. And then I finished college in 2018, came home and bought a plate meter that year. So it's kind of since then when I took more of an interest into it and started measuring, putting the results up onto PastureBase, and then things have just really improved really since when I started kind of doing that. But no, Dad would have put down a good roots all started off now, to be fair to him.
Yeah. And so how since you started measuring grass, have you seen any changes on the farm, or is it
definitely, yeah. Well, look, the amount of grass that we're growing and the quality, definitely, they're the two that has improved definitely the most. But at the moment, look, we're just finishing up with the lambing there now, and as I say, we're lambing outdoors, so we don't have the luxury to be able to put sheep back inside if we start to run short. So at the moment we're starting to bunch up into the bigger bunches,
Yeah.
and
Maybe you might move on
starting
to
a
that
second
wedge
rotation.
there, Joe, or me, yeah, sorry, Joe, yeah. So this is your wedge for the week. So yeah, your farm cover's at 800 at the minute. You had a good bit of grass growth, like you had a good heavy cover of grass there. I suppose at the start of lambing, Peter, so you wanted a good heavy cover to sort of eat into over the month because you're lambing outdoors, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, we would have went into a heavy cover to start off with. Maybe some paddocks were maybe a bit too heavy, should have been out earlier. But just when we do go to start lambing, it's to stop mismothering. You just kind of want to leave everything well enough alone. So and that way they just kind of be just left be. So it's best to be looking at it rather than forward to
Yeah.
that stage. And
And
now you can just start taking action as for pulling paddocks.
yeah, so just like obviously the spring rotation plan doesn't work as simply maybe on a sheep farm because you can have smaller groups around the place of sheep, maybe in sheltered paddocks, and you're trying to, not put too many sheep together too soon when lambs are young. So how are you managing at the moment? Like, is half the farm grazed or 60% of the farm grazed, or when are you looking at finishing up? I suppose getting into grazing some paddocks for the second time.
In the next 2 weeks, we'll be starting to go into some of the paddocks that maybe they'd be grazed out, but not maybe fully grazed out, just to start bunching ones up. But
Yeah,
in the last maybe 10 days, we've started to bunch up. So maybe in another 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks time, we'll start going back to them paddocks. There's even a few paddocks there today. There was three
yeah,
paddocks that was pulled out, and I know I won't need for silage. That I had 28 days in front of me, and I'm meeting demand at the moment with enough grass in front of me, so they could be taken out already. So it's kind of all really kind of just starting
so
now that we're
sort
fact
of
that we're
before
that
you're,
that
yeah. Sorry, Peter.
No, yeah, no. It's just as just we're starting to bunch up into the big bunches, and that leaves things starting to recuperate and come back, and then and start pulling ones out for silage, and just how to tackle the stronger ones.
Yeah, yeah. So just Peter, I suppose you threw a figure at me there when we were talking there before this event. Like, what did your farm grow roughly last summer in terms of what was the growth rate like?
Yeah, well, of an average to grow, it was 73 from say the 1st of May to the end of August. Of an average throughout the summer, there was 73. Um, Look, the
Yeah,
ewes are only taking a small part of that. We're stocked about 10 and a half ewes to the hectare. So at the moment,
yeah. So if you do a quick sum there of the ewes maybe are eating, the sheep intakes usually when a ewe lambs she's eating about 2.5 kilos of dry matter per ewe, and then that increases up to, I suppose, with her lambs eating as well, it increases up to about 4 maybe by probably mid-May or somewhere in
mm,
our region. So it's probably at around maybe 3 now, and it'll increase up to 4 per head over the next month. So like if you're stocked at 10.5, obviously that's only setting your demand up into the early 30s or whatever. So and which is more or less nearly what it is, as you say, you're finishing up lambing now. So how do you, if you're going to be growing 73 for the next 2 or 3 months, maybe not this month but into the next month and on, how do you manage it, like?
yeah, well, so the ewes kind of they're assigned to maybe say half what we're growing out of that 73, and then from the first week of May to the end of September, we take in about 120 Jersey bull and heifers on a daily rate. So about 120 of them at 350 kilos, they're in around taking about a ton off a ton a day. So they
Okay,
yeah, so they're I suppose they're a quarter, and another a quarter of the 73, and then silage. So there's
yeah,
as I said, there's a beef finishing unit on the farm, so we're making silage for that, and then just taking out surplus for bales. So there's about a quarter of what's been grown then is being taken out for silage. Silage we wouldn't be cutting heavy crops, but just small and often more so.
so that you're cutting like good quality silage, and I suppose that's being fed to, well, it's either cattle in the shed or ewes or in the winter time or whatever, is it?
Yeah, I would definitely doing it that way. Before we weren't taking in cattle and we weren't spreading much fertilizer. But then come we run into a big problem at the end, middle of June, grass was just starting to go stemmy, stressed because we didn't need the grass, so we weren't spreading fertilizer. And now we're kind of killing two birds with the one stone. We're making the use out of the grass and we're keeping quality the whole time too, and making good quality silage. Silage last
Yeah,
year was test 74 DMD. 16% protein and 27% dry matter. So that left us, we didn't have to feed any meal to any singles at all then pre-lambing.
Saving a lot of money
Okay.
in your
And even with the twins, you were
sorry.
Yeah, the
saving
twins,
a lot of money.
the twins didn't get much either. That was just in the last maybe 5 weeks before lambing. There was only, was it 15 or 16 kilos a meal per ewe was what was fed then pre-lambing. So no, look, it
Yeah.
saves.
Yes. And like Peter, to achieve this in terms of like getting good growth rates, obviously you said you're putting the fertilizer on, and you're obviously out measuring. You're out measuring weekly, or maybe even twice
Yeah,
a week. There's some of
weekly.
the high growth periods. Like, is that Yeah. So like, what is
Yeah, once a week. Yeah.
what is yeah? I suppose what other benefits is this having? So obviously by cutting out, obviously you've pushed your demand up to about 50 with the sheep and cattle, and then the rest, the surplus, then is coming out of silage. What is that doing for your system? Like, what are the other benefits that brings to you? Like,
We're drafting lambs. We're drafting lambs quick. So by starting lambing on the 10th of March, the end of May, we could have, by the 1st of June, we could have 10 or 12% of the lambs killed, and then that increased for the whole summer. By the middle of the summer, there could be half them gone, and then for the end of September, in 2020 there was 96% of the lambs killed on the 31st of, or yeah, the 30th of September. So that leaves things easy then
that
for
was
us when
that was
the
nearly
feeding
off grass, was it?
all off grass nearly. There was 8 ton of meal, so there was about 8 kilos of meal fed per lamb, reasonably small amount of meal fed too, but it gives the ewes then preference when just before they go out to the ram. We don't synchronize any of the ewes, but we'll be lambing in 90% of them will lamb in the first 3 weeks, so they're all just being well flushed. So the ewes get the best grass there coming in, and then closing up then in the end of the starting of the final rotation then in the middle of October.
Yeah, so you're keeping good quality during the summertime. You're making sure that there's good quality coming back, because a lot of the lambs are basically from nearly weaning time to when they're slaughtered. They're probably nearly on aftergrass most of that time. And then the ewes are being well flushed. So they're good scanning, and they're strong coming into the winter time. And then you have good quality silage to feed. So it's reducing meal out of the diet a lot at the shoulders of the year by keeping it right in the summertime as well, isn't it?
Big time, yeah.
Yeah. Joe, maybe just move some of the targets there. We might come back to them pictures there in a second. Was there a few targets there?
Yeah, here we are.
So these are roughly the targets. I suppose, Peter, we went through them there yesterday. Like you're sort of keeping 12 to 14 days ahead, and that's based off your demand is at 50. So if we do the sum there, your demand is 50. You have 12 days ahead. That's the farm covers at 600. 14 days ahead, the farm covers at 700. So you're keeping it in that region, I suppose. As long as you're keeping it there, you're going into the right covers. And again, that ties back into your rotation length of 18 to 21 days. And I suppose the pre-grazing, Neil, you were talking about, maybe it was a little bit high. Is something maybe you're trying to work on a bit this year to run the ship a bit tighter, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but look, that's what kind of PastureBase shows you then as well. The fact that for the average across the whole year, there could have been something. Maybe we would have been going into covers maybe 1,600. Look, if you're spreading fertilizer, if you don't need to spread as much, it just PastureBase shows you that you don't have to. Or even when you look there and you see that 12 to 14 days, if that's after shooting up to 20 days, there's a 5 days or weeks grass there that you just don't need. So that's back into, you stick that just into silage, and it just shortens everything back down and just pulls the ship tighter again. So it does.
Yeah. So so maybe we could just go up to some of have a look. Sorry, Joe, at the paddocks there. Just Peter very kindly just marked out a few. I suppose just to give us an example of what he's doing obviously to do this, you need paddocks, because you want to be in control of the grass on your farm, and that can only be done through the paddock system. So we just go up one more there, I think, Joe. So
there, John. Yeah.
Sorry, I think my internet's playing up here. Sorry, is it up one more there, just to the map?
You want to go to the map? Yeah, no, it's always on the map there now. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So what sort of paddock size are you running for the flock numbers, Peter?
Yeah, well, there's 75 hectares here on the grazing platform, and then they're in 20 permanent paddocks. Roughly 3 hectares of paddocks, so it's about 7.5 acres. And as I said, the grazing groups will be running around about 2 bunches of about 300 ewes and their lambs, and then one smaller bunch just with kind of the ewe lambs and later lambers. So the 300 ewes there at the moment,
Yeah.
if they were to go into 1,400 in one of them paddocks, it'd take you'd be 5-6 days in it. So the red lines there, the unbroken say red lines, they're the permanent paddocks, and then that's where I'd be splitting there with the broken red lines. All the paddocks, there's either water at two ends or the center point. So we did that kind of in recent years, and that's really helped with being able to put up the temporary fencing to get the better graze outs.
Yes, perfect. So you're running 4 strands and the water's there as well. Yeah. So you're left very flexible, and I suppose that can all be taken down if you're, as you say, like one of those full paddocks will do 5 days for sheep. So as you say, if you 20 days ahead, you need to get back to 12 to 14. You're taking out at least a paddock, so you're probably just whipping down that wire and taking it out or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's grand, Peter. So look, is there any questions in there for Peter at the moment?
I
don't think there's any on the sheep
no.
side, but no, I think you're doing a super job anyway, Peter. Like you're the performance of the lambs off grass alone is telling it, and growing a lot of grass. So, and I suppose over the next 80, 90 days is crucial to make all that work. So, we might come back to you there at the end, Peter.
Perfect. Cheers, lads.
Perfect stuff there, Micheál. Do you want to?
Right, Nola, you're.
Or yeah, John.
Yeah. No, Noel. Your time to shine. Welcome and thanks for taking the time out, Noel, for your busy schedule. And I suppose if you could maybe start to just give us a small bit of an introduction to yourself and to your farm there. I suppose it has changed over the last number of years, and I suppose the team of people as well giving you a hand day to day.
Right, Noel Hurley is my name, and I'm farming in Kildare, just as which is down in Cork. I have a grazing platform there of 68 hectares, and there's out blocks in of about 38 or 39 hectares. At the moment, I'm milking 200 cows and keeping the followers and a few dry cows. So I suppose I'm in 2 grass groups, and the Adrian O'Callaghan will be the facilitator one, and John Maher will be the facilitator the other one. So that's how I got into the whole measuring in 2015. I was invited into the Mallow grass group, and I joined the grazing coaches group in to try and get myself up to speed so that I could try and catch up with the boys somewhere fast. So as far as in the end of the day, it is all down to the 2 groups that have got me to where I am today, and I think it's the way forward to try and get plenty of people into groups and get the knowledge transferring from one to the other, because I wouldn't be anywhere only for the 2 groups at this stage, and that's it.
And I suppose, Noel, if we go back 5 years, could you estimate how much grass you were growing? I know in 2020 you nearly grew 16 tonne, but I suppose what kind of a base do you think you were coming from, or what have you seen in your own farm? What improvements or what?
The improvements are like when I got the plate meter first, I thought I was going to maybe 14 or 1500, and when I started measuring, I realized that we're a good bit out, So the first thing anyway was I started going to covers of maybe 1600 the first couple of years, and graze also better, and protein started to lift a bit, and I was going around that bit faster, and there was more tonnage being grown every year. then as time went on, I started getting more confident, and I'd be going down to. I'd have no bother going to 1,200-1,300 now if I had to, like, you know, but I'd be aiming towards 1,400 all the time, like. No, the other benefits of protein was away, and I was going to better quality grass all the time, and the meal I was probably feeding up to a ton. I was definitely feeding a ton and a quarter ration, and I started. Would say for the first couple of years, my land base kind of stayed the same. I was carrying more cows with less ration, so like there was huge benefit to the whole thing anyway. Like, you know, like cutting less strong paddocks and doing away less topping.
Right. So you were seeing it in the cows were performing better. There were better graze outs, less input and more output.
Yeah, that's it. I was able to carry a lot more stock, like with less input and like I was able to get more production out of them because I was going to better quality feed.
And you nearly achieved 10 events per paddock, Noel. And what do you think the key is there? I suppose in 2020 you got 9.6. What do you think is the key there to achieve, I suppose, a high number of events per paddock?
From now until the middle of August, I suppose the main thing is not to be afraid to go under 21 days. You'll probably do it if you stayed at 21 days for the year, but like when you come into growth rates of 100 or even 90, like you need to be able to come down to 17 or 18 days or even 15 days just to stay ahead of it, or I'll start cutting, like, you know, and didn't cut away, but like don't be afraid to cut paddocks, I mean, and come down to 14 days on the back of it. If you're in a growth of 14 or 1,400, whereas if you're there of 100, if you're there and you're kind of saying, I'll be down to 14 days if I cut these 3 paddocks and I'll run out of grass. But like we're doing the figures there with the last 5 or 6 years, and we have we're using our own figures to make decisions. Like, so like, and we know the figures from previous years. Like if you just go with, follow the figures, and you'll just see that you can come back in the days, and that's where you'll make up the time, like, you
right
know?
And I suppose Joe's there is after flicking on your wedge, and if I just share my screen here, and we'll be able to display it there live on PastureBase. That you did a cover there a couple of days ago, Noel. I hope you can see it there now in front of you. You did a cover on the fort. Talk us through your thoughts on the fort, or after doing this cover and put it into PastureBase.
Right, I've loads of grass in there. That's the first thing, you know.
What gave that away, Noel, or what are you looking for? I suppose we've people on the call now, Noel, maybe that they might be measuring with a month, or they might be measuring with 3 years, and who knows, there might be a few that haven't started measuring yet.
The first thing I know is the farm cover was nearly 1,100, right? And the most important one is the cover per livestock unit was up to 260. Was up to 260. No, then it's gone, right? Yeah, the days ahead didn't show that I was 17 days ahead of me, right? So so they were all the figures I took into account, like, you know. So what I actually did then was I took out ground for silage paddocks that I just grazed, right?
Right.
That hadn't been cleaned out well enough. I took that out for silage, and I took out I took out ground for reseeding as well. Now, normally with the amount of grass that I have there, it's in a similar situation last year. I skipped the heaviest cover because the growth rates for the coming couple of weeks for the coming week were good. But this year the growth rates for the coming week could be down to 25, like definitely somewhere between 25 and 30. So I said I might need all the grasses there. So I'd expect if the growth rate comes in at 25 to 30 from last Sunday to next Sunday, I'd expect to have the cover per livestock unit down to just under 200.
Right. So maybe we might do that here. So we have the projected wedge / planner. So I suppose this projects ahead 7 days or even 14 days into the future, and you'll be able to see what your farm cover will be in a week's time. And it also, I suppose, gives you the opportunity to be able to take out paddocks and then see maybe where will you be in a week's time as well. So if we just project ahead there, so
if the growth drops to 30, Micheál, and like the demand is 64, well then obviously there's a deficit there every day, and this is where I suppose the different figures come in. There's a deficit every day of 30 or 34 a day. So if you do a week, 30 times 7 is 210. So you're up, you're probably going to knock at least 200 to 250 off that farm cover. I suppose that's where Noel, that's what you're saying is you'll eat into that average farm cover this week.
Yeah, that's it. I'd expect me down to, I'll probably be down to around 900 at least by the weekend, and that'll bring me back to about somewhere between 190 and 200 per cow per livestock unit.
Yeah. So I suppose that's why Noel, that you had a bit of extra grass, we'll say on the 4th of April, and you knew you had a bit of extra grass, but I suppose you wanted to hold on to it because you knew the cold week was coming.
That's it. Like I said, I had a similar situation last year, and I skipped 3 hectares of 1,600 cover, and like if you were to do that in that wedge, it would knock you back to 200 per livestock unit anyway. Like.
And I suppose, Noel, you're involved in a good few groups. I suppose, where do you see guys going wrong, or where do you see that guys can improve more? Maybe you were in that category a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, I can only go by myself, like, but my biggest problem, the biggest thing that I was doing wrong in the start was I wasn't acting fast enough. I wasn't making the decision fast enough, and then as time went on, I was making decisions fast enough, but I wasn't making. I wasn't going severe enough in the decisions. So, like, I could go in and say, yeah, I have a cover there of 210 per livestock unit. Sure, I'll knock out this paddock and that'll bring me back to 190 in the month of June. Like, Okay. So, whereas now, I make the decision to go. I could be, we'll say, at 190, and I make the decision straight away to go back down to 165, 170, because depending on the growth, like, I don't know about going down to 150 if there was a good week coming. Like.
So you're really hung up on the cover per livestock unit, and that's going to be your bread and butter for the next 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's been drilled in for the last 5 years by your buddies, Adrian and John.
but it's fair to say that it's working though.
And what difference does it make on the? What difference does it make going from the 190 to 160? Because it sounds like a thing of nothing. Like, but for you, what does it mean? Like,
actually, you're going to lower cover grass, and there's better cleanouts and around the dungs and all that, like, and like there's no need to run around with mowers topping after them and that kind of thing, like, and you have a green base finishing up. You have a better cleanout and a green base finishing up, and the grass is coming back faster after.
So it's a win-win so for everyone all, really.
Well, I'd say so.
And going forward this year, Noel, I suppose, you've closed up a good bit of ground for silage, I suppose, and you would have mentioned previously that you have a good bit of silage in the yard left over. What's the plan, I suppose, over the summertime?
Sure, the first thing is I'm after closing up a good bit for a CD as well. And the plan over the summertime is I'll probably cut back to, well, I probably didn't cut back. Last year I cut back to 17 or 18 units per round of nitrogen per round after grazing. And if I could pull it back a small bit more, I probably would like, but it's hard to go any lower than that. So the plan would be just I'll do a decent first cut, and we'll seed in what way strong paddocks go on all that, and take out paddocks as they take out paddocks. Some paddocks as they go strong, but I'll probably let some grow on a bit. We'll say maybe get them up to 2,000 before I cut them, and there might be a later paddock kind of come in at the same time and further that in with it and just play around with it like that, like.
And what do you want to stock the farm at, Noel, I suppose, for the summertime for your peak growth rates?
I'd be thinking somewhere between the 4.2 and 4. Well, definitely not lower than 4.2 up until the 1st of July.
Right.
It'll be varying then upwards of that anytime when the ground claws off. Like I found last year was the first time that I went, that I ended up at 4.2 early in April, and it made a job of me for the year, to be honest with you.
Okay, so it kept your pre-grazing yield correct, your residuals good, and cows were performing well off it.
Yeah, it's all like it just happened by accident. The paddock was too strong, and normally I'd have cut it, but it had got slurry with the umbilical year, maybe 3 weeks before that, and it had stayed dry and it couldn't be raked up, so it was left there then until nearly the middle of May. So it was just gone, like, and it made a job of the whole place, to be honest with you.
Okay. And just coming back to your projected wedge here, so we put in a growth rate here of 30 kilos because I suppose Noel was predicting that the weather or the growth was going to drop off a bit, and as a consequence, in a week's time or next Sunday, his cover per livestock unit is going to be around the 200 mark, 197 there is what we're predicting. So again, that's available on the browser, and it's also available on the PBI offline app. You can increase or decrease your growth rates, and you can also change the number of days for the projection, change your cow numbers, etc. So you can change your grass demand. So that's a handy tool there, which is available on the Wedge, I suppose, on the Wedge screen. Just talk you through the next couple of months. Do you walk weekly? Do you walk twice a week? I know you use a plate meter. Do you find it good?
I walk. I do it. I'd always do it once a week, but we'd say in May, and I suppose from the start of May to the middle of June, I'd probably do it twice in 10 days, kind of an effort, like, you know, something around that, like
Right.
maybe 3 times in 2 weeks, like, you know. I use the way to take people. To be honest with you, I kind of find that I learned to do it with the plate meter, and I find it kind of comes up around your ankles and on to yourself if you're not using something right to measure it. Like, you know, you go into a field there and you'd say, hey, yeah, there's probably 1350 or 1400 there, and you measure it, and it might be 15. You know, just kind of I just prefer using with plate meter all the time. Like,
Okay.
I wouldn't be mad confident with the eyeball at all. Like.
Good stuff, yeah. And I suppose, Noel, you are after a big bank of information in PastureBase over the last 5 years, and I suppose there's a number of reports there. In the report section, you have a grass report, cover report, to, I suppose, pull out some of the information. And I know that you were a big advocate of the budget, especially this year, the grass budget for the springtime.
Yeah, both Adrian and John pushed the budget hard this year. And I stuck with it religiously until I suppose the weekend before last.
Okay.
Yeah, we're heading on like I was supposed to have every week I was supposed to have whatever percentage grazed, and I was only about 1% over all the time, like, you know. But didn't we get the burst to go out there the week before, just come on to the weekend before last, and I left them run on in at that stage. But like up until then, my budget was telling me I shouldn't be start the second round until next Friday.
Okay, so you made your decision there and then.
Yeah, when I measured last Sunday week, and I said the grass is gone way ahead of the budget, so I pulled back the meal silage straight away and left them off full time.
Good stuff. Is there any questions there, Joe or John, for Noel or even for Peter at this stage?
Yeah, there's a few here. Maybe there's one there for Noel just on the reseeding. Noel, do you do much reseeding every year?
Not a whole pile. I reseeded the whole farm in 2007, and like there's no silage. There wasn't a lot of silage coming off the home farm, and what was coming off was strong, kind of lightish stuff and strong paddocks and stuff like that. So during the big
Light cuts,
there's no weeds come in, and sure, like I'd be averaging 16. I had 16 last year, nearly 17 the year before.
And it's fair to say you're on good side fertility as well, Noel. I'd
be an index 3 and 4 on P and K, and the lime is generally 6.3 to 6.5. Now I'm reseeding it. Most of what I'm reseeding is rented ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michal, there's just a question in there, Michal. Do you have the app open on the other screen? Have you?
I'll just take a look there now.
It's just there's a
just
question
while you're doing
here.
that there, Michal.
Just a question there, and I suppose it's just when Noel is using the plate meter, it might just be no harm. There's a question in here. The hardest part of PastureBase I found was using it inputting from the first and second readings from the plate meter onto PastureBase, and maybe Michal, it might just be an ideal opportunity to show that little tool there on the app.
I
there.
can. I'll be setting that up there, and if we can work away with another question, Joe.
Great stuff. And lads, there's two questions. There's a question in there. Maybe I might put it to Peter first. Just in terms of the nitrogen input across the farm, have you a figure for what it was for last year?
14 tons. There was 250 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. That's what was used to grow that.
You might go on mute there, Michal.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're right. You're right. And in your situation as well, Noel.
Yeah, but it came out at just slightly over 200 kilos per hectare, plus the slurry.
Okay, 200 kilos per hectare.
The total slurry and fertilizer came in just under 250.
Okay, perfect. That's great. And
Noel, so less than 200 units per acre anyway, Noel, for your on the grazing ground.
That's it. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So it's amazing with the good performance swards and the good soil side fertility. It's a lot more responsive to the nitrogen fertilizer, and then you're making good use of your slurry then as well. Like so.
All the stories go with the last 3 years, and fairness is a great response to that.
Great stuff. Super. Yeah. And just a question in there, Noel, as well. Well, two questions in just in terms of have you got rid of the strip wires yet, or are they still up?
They're still up.
They're still up, yeah.
And they will be up because my paddocks are all wrong size again. Like I'll have to change them all for about the 4th time since I came here, maybe the 5th time since I came here. So it's a bit messy at the moment. Like, but I could end up in a situation that there'll be only one paddock in the whole farm shops and just put out wires here and there.
Good stuff. Not so bad. How are you getting on there, Michal?
Yeah, I'm good there. I'd say you can see it there now.
Yeah.
That's fine. We just get over that. So if we just go into the app here, and I just click on cancel, there's a small bit of a delay. So this is your list of paddocks here. So if we just click into paddock 1, and we can see the previous cover was 1300. It's looking for a new cover, kilos of dry matter. if you just click on calc, CLC, it's on the cut and weigh method. So if you just change it over to the plate meter, and you can put in, I suppose, the number, we'll say the start number on your rising plate meter. Then maybe do your 20 drops and put in your in value. We'll just say it's 1400. And we're converting the height in of 10 centimeters into kilos of dry matter, which is 1500 kilos of dry matter there. So if you're happy enough with that, you can just click on use, and you can see it's after jumping in here. Then the new covering is after coming in at 1500 kilos. And then you can just go save and next. You can go into calculate again. You can see the start now is 1400. And again, maybe put in 2000. And then you can just use that value and save and close again. So that's, I suppose, that's the calc function there for the plate meter. And if you're using the cut and weigh method, you can just put in the grams. So if I have 150 grams, we'll say at 17% dry matter, that's a cover of 1020. Click on use and it jumps in there again as well. So that can be a handy little button there.
And just, Michal, there fairly quickly, just while you have the conversion factors for the people maybe who are on denser swards with yaws there, if they want to change it from the 250 kilos per centimetre.
Yes, so at the moment, I suppose, if we go into the calc again here, we can see that it is set at, if you go into the conversion, it's set that every centimetre above 4 centimetres is equal to 250 kilos of dry matter. So I suppose you're right, if you are a specialised sheep farmer, that you just had sheep on the farm, it can be up at probably 350. And maybe if you're a mixed enterprise sheep and cattle, you could use 300. They'd be kind of the guides that we'd be using on the different farms here, different research farms at Chagas.
And so, Michal, just to explain that's for every centimetre over the 4, there's 300 kilos in that, kilos of grass in that centimetre of grass.
Yeah, that'd be for a mixed farming enterprise with sheep and cattle. I suppose the general one, I suppose, for dairy farms and maybe for cattle farms will be 250 kilos. Okay,
brilliant, perfect stuff. So I'm just going to put one more question to both you lads, and we'll keep moving. Then I might go to you first, Peter, on clover. Is there much clover incorporated on your farm?
No, not a lot. We'd be reseeding around about 10% each year, and it would it'd be sowed at the time, but every year we seem to run into a massive problem with chickweed, and I suppose it's a problem we shouldn't be really running into with the sheep, that the sheep should be able to nip it down. But the last few times we had to reseed, we had to go and spray it, and once you sprayed the broadleaf weed, the clover takes the hit as well. And then again, look, the nitrogen, we're spreading a good bit of fertilizer throughout the year too, so that doesn't help the clover later on. So no is the answer to that.
Okay, and Noel, I'll throw it over to you.
No is the answer here as well.
Okay.
No, this big change is coming, right? We say everything that I'm receiving this year now will have the 2.5 kilos of clover in it, because I suppose going forward, you're probably looking at reduced fertilizer anyway. So it's time to start finding other ways of producing nitrogen.
Yeah, and I think just to on that, I think a lot of people at the 200 kilos or 250 kilos are actually getting on very well with clover on farms. So again, and then as confidence is built in the clover, the ability will be there to reduce the amount of N that's being spread on the farm, especially from the middle part of the year on. So. Good stuff. I'm just going to share there if that's all right, Michal. Yeah, perfect. So we're going to keep.
There's just one question there on the homepage of the app. Looks different to mine. Why? It could be just a different. Might need to be updated, Michal, I suppose, or it could be a different account. There is dry stock account versus dairy account. It would be slightly different as well.
Yeah, just I suppose the dairy, the difference between the dairy and the dry stock is the milk sales. And if it is coming up differently, I suppose I would just press synchronize, so synchronize the data, delete the app, download it again, log in and synchronize, and you should have the most up-to-date app then. That's probably the fastest way and the easiest way of doing it, to be honest.
Yeah. And there's a question there, does the app put in the growth rate, or how do you know what to input? So I think maybe just an explanation there of how the growth rate is worked out. You know, the PastureBase, you put in the cover that's on it this week. PastureBase knows what was on it last week, and basically the difference is divided by the number of days between your walk, and that's the growth rate per day, and that's done on the paddock. And then obviously they're weighted then on an average growth rate for the farm is calculated. So you have to do your walk obviously to get the growth rate there. So
Brilliant.
sorry, Joe.
Good stuff. Now, look, I just want to, we're coming close to the end now. I just wanted to cover off one or two little bits and pieces before we finish. A thing that's been, I suppose, it's something that's been mentioned on a number of our webinars, and you know, subsequently after it, was doing the back calculation, and maybe for people who are maybe getting covers slightly wrong, and you know, and I just said, you know, even the important thing at the bottom is even the most experienced people, you know, get covers wrong, and maybe during peak growths, covers can, you know, move from, you know, 14, 1500, you know, up to 17, 18, you know, literally in the space of a day or two. So it's just something to be aware of. And just, if you want to take a picture, people on here want to take a picture and go through this calculation for their own farm. But it's just a quick example. If we have 100 cows during July being allocated 17 kilos of grass, their demand per day is 100 by 17, which is 1700 kilos of dry matter. If we measured a 1.8 hectare paddock at 1400 on our weekly grass walk, so we expect that there'll be 1.8 hectares by that 1400, which is just over 2500 kilos of dry matter available in that paddock. Okay, so if I divided that 2520 into my daily demand of 1700, what PastureBase would be telling me, or what I would be expecting, is that I'd be expecting that to be a 3 grazing paddock or a 1.5 day paddock. Okay, so as if I'm coming towards the end of it and the cows end up getting 4 grazings or 2 days in that paddock, you know, obviously my pre-grazing yield would have been much higher on that, for that example. So the demand for the 2 days would have been 1700 essentially multiplied by 2, which is 3400. And our 3400 divided into that 1.8 hectares, it would have given me, I suppose, a pre-grazing yield in that paddock of about 1900. Okay, so there's a number of ways of doing that, but that's just a way. If there's people on the webinar tonight who want to, you know, if they kind of feel that they were getting a couple of them wrong and doing a back calculation of what exactly is in the paddock after a grazing, that's one of the ways to go about it. The just last couple of slides, you know, it's very simple, and I suppose, look, Noel has mentioned it, and we've mentioned it in our last number of webinars, but there's a direct correlation between the walk in your farm during the mid-season, you know, from now on every week, and going into the correct pre-grazing yield. Okay, and you know, if we target at 160 to 180 kilos of dry matter per cow or per livestock unit over the summer, you know, farmers are constantly coming back to us that, you know, say for this example here on the right hand side of the screen, this farmer walked the farm 13 times in the mid-season in 2019. He walked it 27 times, along with, you know, being a, you know, a better grassland management and a further year in terms of knowledge on it. As you can see, the cover per livestock unit came from 260 down to 182. Okay, within the space of a year. So that the more often that you walk your farm and measure grass, the more often your animals are going to graze the correct cover. Okay, and this is the exact same thing on, you know, a beef, sheep, and dry stock, you know, farms as well. You know, it doesn't really make any difference what the system is. Okay, we keep the, you know, the pre-grazing yield and I suppose the cover per livestock unit and days ahead figure, you know, within, in kind of, I suppose, in a certain band. So demand again can be quite variable across, on dry stock farms is different levels of stocking rate. But if there's a 50 to 60 kilos of dry matter per hectare demand on farms, somewhere around 12 days ahead mid-season, and then with the lower demand, it'll probably be somewhere in around 15, 16 days ahead on those farms. And then again, the example is just showing the exact same thing, that the more often, and the extra year of built, that this farmer in question here has built up. Okay, as you can see, he's reduced his days ahead back to 18 from 23 on average for the summer, and he's reduced his pre-grazing yield from 1660 back to 1500, okay, in the space of a year, okay, with a lot more summer walks being done on the farm. Okay, so look, just to summarize on what we've done there tonight, and I suppose, look, at Dustin, as I said already, it doesn't matter whether it's a dairy farm, it's a sheep farm, you're a contract rearing, it's beef, whatever it is. I suppose PastureBase is the key tool over the next couple of months to keep a handle on grass as we move from a period of low growth rates to high growth rates. And so the weekly grass walk is your key decision making tool. Okay, and sticking to that 160, 180 per livestock unit, in dairy situations, and maybe on the dry stock side of things, sticking to a days ahead figure, or a cover per livestock unit throughout the mid-season. And I suppose to set yourself a challenge over the next 60 days to try and aim to graze three rotations. Okay, and I suppose that is that'd be the key thing over the next 60 days. We've got three 20-day rotations roughly on average. Okay, is a good target to go after. Graze covers of 1400 every day. Okay, so that we can graze out clean, and we ensure that there's a good quality sward coming back for the next rotation. And just in terms of on the nitrogen thing, we didn't really mention it much tonight, but just to update further from the target to the 1st of April was somewhere around 65 units on dry farms. I suppose the target, for the next month would be roughly somewhat in around a unit a day, or maybe 25 units for the month, bringing that roughly up to between 90 and 100 units now by the 1st of May. Okay, so I suppose lastly, before we finish, I would like to thank Noel and Peter for their time here tonight. It's always great to have, I suppose, two farmers who have, made huge changes on their farm over the last few years. And, as I said, both of them have won awards in terms of the Grassland Farmer of the Year last year. So they're making huge strides and are achieving great things in terms of grassland management on their farm. I'd like to thank them for their time tonight. And I'd also like to thank my Grass 10 colleague, John Douglas, and Micheál O'Leary from PastureBase Ireland. I'd also like to thank the sponsors of the Grass 10 campaign, which is Teagasc, the Department of Agriculture, the Farmers Journal, AIB, Grassland Agro, and FBD. And look at, we wish the best of luck with your grassland management over the next month, and we'll be back the first Wednesday of May with our next webinar, and details will be out fairly soon on that. Okay, so thanks very much, and we'll talk to you next month.